Ash to ash, dust to dust, fade to black, the MP3 remains.
That was a horrible parody, and probably my worst ever. But this is MultimediaJay Radio Style for Sunday, May 14th, 2017. Let's start the show.
MultimediaJay Radio Style.
Well, I didn't think I'd be recording another one of these anytime soon, but things have changed in the neighborhood in the last couple of weeks. The weather has swung back more towards spring than summer, and Woofy has been dealt with. Hopefully not in an abusive or neglectful manner, but we'll revisit the whole taking a break from these podcasts when things heat back up again, because I have reason to believe things will get noisy when the weather gets nice. For now, though, the weather isn't nice, ergo things are quieter than they were getting before and whatnot, so we'll revisit the whole taking it easy with the podcasting thing later, which gives me just the perfect amount of time to chime in on the death of MP3. That's been floating around in the media over the last couple of days. MP3 is dead, says Engadget. Long live AAC, and there are several other articles, but I'll link to the Engadget one in the description because that's the one that brought my attention to this matter. But yeah, MP3, it's all over. The music format that brought us the digital music revolution, at least in its first stages, is now officially, folks are like, whatever, it's in the dustbin of history. Still going to be used, but it would be wise to call it a legacy format at this point. Basically what happened was Fraunhofer, I'm guessing that's how it's pronounced because it's a German company, and there's this thing we Americans do with anglicizing German names where the O is like, basically we would say Fraunhofer instead because it sounds cool. Fraunhofer. But since I have only seen this name in text articles and not actually heard it pronounced, and I've been a lazy ass and didn't go find where people in the company say the name of their own company, I'm just going to say the company that was licensing out MP3 technology has recently, they were like, oh yeah, okay, we're done, heck with it. And basically what happened was the AAC format has pretty much displaced MP3 at this point in terms of lossy formats. It's a different world than it was in 2000, that's for sure, and the iTunes generation has done its damage. If you have a device nowadays that needs MP3s because AAC isn't officially supported, aka the default format in iTunes isn't officially supported, your device just plain sucks, and you need to buy a new device. The end. Among some of the reasons why this has happened, although someone like me should have seen this coming anyways with the way things were changing in the last several years, among some of the official reasons giving is just that AAC has just displaced MP3. It's become more efficient when it comes to lossy formats, and of course, for people that want lossless, there's plenty of options there too, but in terms of the generic format that you should have on your music player, AAC has eaten MP3's lunch. At the very same time, MP3 is being MP3'd again in terms of efficiency by the streaming revolution, as streaming services basically drive more efficient formats and whatnot on the lossy side of things. MP3 basically became a dinosaur, and largely the only real reason to keep using MP3s is legacy and backward compatibility with older devices. I had a few devices, but I don't know if I have them anymore, so maybe now's the time to redigitize the collection of CDs that I have, either in lossless format or just go AAC and call it. I don't exactly have the best conditions for just sitting around listening to music, so getting every single frequency 100% isn't totally the best thing for me to do. And that's actually one of the reasons why, strangely enough, MP3 even amounted to anything in the first place. Its efficiency, or those magical two worlds, not the game, those magical two words in the world of multimedia known as good enough. And this is why audio is a warning to the Blu-ray revolution as to why Blu-ray hasn't taken over the world yet. good enough can actually work. If people want to see the content, they can tune out the ability to see like fuzzy edges on upscale DVDs and things along those lines, at least among the mainstream crowd. People who always want the best, most highest quality experience ever, they're going to be buying Blu-rays. But the mainstream audience doesn't play those games. They play by a different set of rules. They just want to see the content, and in this case, just hear the music. If the bulk of your music listening is through those two horrible little earbuds coming from your phone or your music player because you're out jogging, then you don't exactly need the best of lossless formats. It's a different world, though, if you do have a dedicated listening room or a system that can reproduce all the frequencies, and lossy formats will show up on a system that good and a setup that good. Even some of my hack job setups over the years, some of the worst ones compared to what I have now, were able to do this. Like those times when folks are like, hey, MP3s, check this out. There's some MP3s from my college. Yeah. I'm like, the drums sound like they're underwater. There's only one music video I know of where that actually happens. Come on now. Trivia, that was Creed's My Sacrifice video, by the way, back in those days. But to truly understand the legacy of the MP3 format, we need to understand where MP3 brought us from. Where exactly did this digital music revolution come from, and why did we have it in the first place, and why is it the sort of thing that the record companies are still complaining about to this day? We're not making the money we used to. This is gonna kill us. 15 plus years and counting. Music companies, whatever. So anyways, to understand why MP3 was such a thing and why I'm even taking the time to deliver, like, is it a eulogy or something like that? I don't know. Why a wake or a funeral speech or whatever you want to call it. To understand the impact of MP3 on music technology as we know it, particularly portable devices and personal devices, you have to understand what music was like back in the 1990s. The music scene in the 1990s was terrible, and I'm not just talking about the doom and gloom, down in the dumps, angst nonsense that the grunge movement took mainstream. I'm talking about actually having to listen to music on real CDs in portable CD players. What a mess that was. I actually still have a regular CD player that I haven't used in years, and I just couldn't bear to part with because it was one of the last major rip-offs of my college years. I bought it from my college bookstore for $80 because I was an idiot that didn't shop online first. It doesn't even handle MP3 CDs, regular CDs only, but at least it's a Sony. But if I ever want to go on a little nostalgia trip, I still have it, and it still works, I think. I just don't want to go back to listening to CDs. Okay, so here's how it worked. Once upon a time, there were cassettes and CDs. Cassettes would get wrapped around your cassette player's spindles or whatnot. It's kind of like the smaller version of VCRs eating tapes back in those days. And they would wear out and they'd have analog noise and things along those lines. But CDs were more expensive. However, they kept their sound until you scratched the heck out of them or something like that. But basically, unfortunately at the time, there weren't really too many good options for buying music. There was no digital music yet. And there wasn't even a big box option. Yeah, Walmart sold music, but Walmart was trying to be all family friendly and stuff. So odds are if you bought a CD from Walmart, you would get the radio version or the censored version if you listened to music with swears in it. So if you can imagine folks that I went to school with listening to grunge and gangsta rap and things like that, Walmart wasn't exactly destination numero uno to buy music from. So with no real big box option around here, because Walmart's off the table because they were all being a bunch of prudes at the time with what they sold in their stores, you would end up in a real music store like Strawberries or FYE or Tower Records or something, and you would be paying specialty retail prices, which it was so common that it got made fun of in a skit during the Napster days. When people were, Napster, it's going to ruin the music industry's profits, and some of the skits in response to that were making fun of the cost of CDs at the time, and I vividly remember this, which is why I have it down ice cold. So with no big box option, and if you wanted to listen to CDs like a proper 90s kid, you would be buying your CDs from a real music store at specialty retail prices, usually $18.98 a CD. And this is in a time where you would have to buy all 13 songs at once and only like one or two of them on the whole album. And there were some bands out there that had one or two hits and the rest was filler. And you're like, I must be the only person in the entire world who cares about this song that's not on the Billboard charts on track whatever of this CD that I have. So, okay, you get ripped off up front. That's one of the big reasons why digital music exploded when it first became viable, is because you could finally buy only what you actually wanted to have, something we didn't have before. Now, here's the next problem. You would buy your overpriced CD, of which you only liked one or two songs, and then if you didn't have a decent portable player, you would run the risk of not only scratching it, but the dreaded scratch from the label side, which would make it look like there was a hole in your CD, because there traditionally was less plastic on the tops of those things than the bottom, and some of the cheesier, less expensive, I don't know if you want to call it indie music or whatnot, but, well, not exactly like there were a lot of less expensive options back then. But there were cheaply produced CDs with no label or something, so it was pretty easy to scratch through the top, and then you'd screw up the whole disc. There were kits to try, or the toothpaste trick to try and fill in scratches from the bottom, but if you went through the top, which was thinner, it was all over. The end. There was one album in particular that was literally a plain CD with just a couple of words on the back, where I went through two 1898 a CD CDs in the span of under 5 years because of Scratch's label side. And then, of course, there's the whole Scratch thing in general. You were listening to your overpriced CD, so to speak, in a portable player jostling around in your backpack, on the bus, in the car, whatever, and even if you had anti-skip on your CD player, you were still spinning the real disc and exposing it to scratches, the whole 9 yards, things along those lines. So basically, it was, unless you were an absolute ace in terms of equipment and how you handled your stuff, it was pretty much impossible to buy a CD once and not run the risk of scratching it, as opposed to today's environment where if you buy a CD, you digitize it, store the CD somewhere, and it's a very different world because you're basically putting all the wear and tear on the computer equipment to listen to the digitized file instead of actually spinning the physical disc that you have. And, of course, unless you wanted to bust out your cassette recorder and make a mixtape out of a bunch of CDs, you didn't have any real options for mixing things up. It was one artist, one album. Maybe you activate shuffle mode on your CD player. But if you wanted to listen to a different artist, you would be swapping discs. And you would be exposing those optical discs to more chances to get scratched. Is it any wonder that digital music exploded like it did with the Napster debacle and even iTunes and stuff like that? No, seriously, there's a reason why digital music became the monster that it is today, because its predecessor was absolute rubbish. Music started going portable with the Sony Walkman in the 80s, but at least cassettes, you didn't have to worry about cassettes getting scratched and becoming unplayable. The CD player days, though, exposed that flaw big time, and is it little wonder that people went racing over to digital music the first chance they got, with that kind of a model in place, and how expensive it was if you didn't want to listen to censored radio tracks and things along those lines. And even stuff where if you listen to music that didn't have swears in the first place, maybe go to Walmart for it or something, but I guess that's the only way that buying music from those types of stores back in those days was anything good. But bottom line, it was a waste of money. When iTunes first came out, 99 cents a song, I'll bet even today's 130 a track songs, although they do kind of technically bring back CD prices under the table if you eventually buy a whole album in multiple steps. You got to take the bulk discount with a digital album in order to come out ahead on that one. But the whole thing with even the 130 a track songs that I've seen on iTunes in recent years are probably still a better deal than what we dealt with CDs back in the day. It's just, oh man. And so the story goes. You get to the point where a market becomes a swamp without innovation, with entrenched monopolist incumbents that are just sucking money out of people. What do you know? Something that breaks up the monopoly. Not only is it a boon for consumers, but the incumbents are enraged by it. That was the case with the music industry with music. It was also the case with Blockbuster when they found out they'd made the wrong decision to not buy Netflix towards the end of their days. It's basically market disruption as usual. It's a lesson that we never seem to learn, but at the same time it's a good thing because it encourages people to look for the next big thing that shakes up the incumbents and ends their days of fleecing people. This is by far no means the only example of an innovation crushing an existing industry and forcing them to play by a new set of rules. But in this case, we have MP3 at the center of all of it. And now that format has been officially retired in favor of AAC, but I know AAC's days will probably come to an end at some point too. I mean, this technology keeps moving forward. One of the reasons why AAC has become what it is because of the focus on more efficiency caused by the streaming revolution like YouTube and Pandora and Spotify and whatnot. I imagine the push for more efficient formats will continue in order to make streaming more of a thing, and that will eventually lead to AAC being displaced at some point. That's just the way things are with this stuff. If you let folks become too complacent or you let the incumbents run away with the show, you end up with a situation like what music was in the 90s. And it's that kind of a situation that leads to explosive disruptors that change the whole game, like what MP3 has done, and what other technologies will do as well. But for now, let's just give a final salute to the MP3 format as the FOSS world is starting to add MP3 functionality now that there's no longer a license thing for it. But as it goes around as kind of a legacy technology, it'll just be a nice little footnote in the history book that this is what kicked off the digital music revolution. Cue sappy music. Alas, MP3, we more than barely knew thee. Welcome to the wonderful world of being legacy. Okay. Time marches on, folks. Time marches on. But one last salute for MP3, the format that built digital music as we know it. This is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.